All right, we wanted to give you something that was practical, and I thought about lots of things. We talked about turkey calling, we talked about different hunting tactics. One thing I can tell you for sure, I learned this, if you're going to get an animal, you got to be in the woods. That's profound, amen? If you're going to get an animal, you got to be in the woods. So that's a tip. Anyway, I was going to give you something on hunting and different tips and so forth, and we talked about having different people come. Russ Carmen normally gives us a talk on trapping, and this year he didn't do that, and so we tossed it around, and I thought, I'm into reloading up to my elbows, obviously. This is only just a little bit of my toys here. I have probably, well, maybe a dozen or 13 presses on my bench, and I've been reloading for years. But in this day and age, with ammunition going up so much, I imagine some of you guys and some of you people are interested in how to reload your own bullets. At least you probably thought about it. And some people think it's a real great deep mystery, and you can get, obviously, you can get engrossed deeply. I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible. It's not really that hard to do. Maybe some of you know how to reload already, but maybe I could give you something along the course of this if you'll listen. I think maybe you may learn something about some different tools or new tools that are available that you may not know about. I'm going to try to do that in the midst of this. First of all, I want to talk to you about presses. You can reload ammunition with something as, now some of you are going to laugh probably, but as simple as this little box right here. You can reload 30-06s, you can reload 243s, you can load, this is 357 Magnum set, and that's all you need. Now it's a complicated, not real complicated, but it's, if I did this for you, I was going to, but I forgot my hammer, frankly. And you have to hammer the case into a die and make it work and so forth. It works. This is how I started reloading probably over 35 years ago. When I was on the road speaking, I would load bullets with this little, it's called a Lee hand loader. And that's all you need. You don't even need a press. And it's not real complicated. These are about $30. And if you wanted to get started in that fashion, you could. I would recommend a press. Now, once you get to presses, there are 3 different kinds of presses, basically. Now, there's lots of stuff on the market. But there's what's called a single stage press, where you have one die in the press at a time. Now, they make them different sizes. This is a small one. I'm just going to show you. This is a single stage press. And you screw a die into this press, and you do one step first. I'm going to talk to you about the steps in just a minute, what steps they are. Then you unscrew that die, and you screw in the second die. For pistol reloading, there's 3 basic dies that you, simplest pistol reloading, 3 dies. With basic rifle reloading, there's 2 dies. So you would screw one in, size your cases, and deprime them. We're going to talk about that. And then you'd screw in the second die that would seat your bullets, and I'm going to show you that. But that's a single-stage press. Very popular press. This is just a little rinky-jinky one. There's a rock chucker that RCBS makes. Every company has a single-stage press, and most guys that reload probably have one of them on their bench. Then there's what's called a turret press, where you have more than one die in a turret. In this particular, that's a little aluminum turret. And I favor this kind of a press because your dies are already set. Once they're set, they're in this turret. And instead of unscrewing them out of your single-stage press and screwing the second one in, you just turn it to the next die. Now, the single-stage presses have come a long way. They now have a bushing that they put in here that you don't have to actually screw them in. You can just snap them in. They have like a half snap. And so you can do it quickly with a single-stage press. Most companies have that now. And once you adjust your die, even with a single-stage press, when you turn it back in, it'll be adjusted. There's only one initial adjusting. As long as you take it out just like it was adjusted, even when you take it out of a single-stage press, it remains adjusted for the next time you put it in. There's little set screws on the sides of the nuts on the die that set the thing so that it's set when you screw it back in. So it's not really that complicated. I'm going to have questions later on. If you have questions, hold them and I'll answer them for you. So you got single stage and you got turret press. And then the third kind of press would be a progressive press. Now, I've had guys that wanted to get started with a progressive press. I highly recommend not doing that. A progressive press, every time you pull the handle on that press, you get a loaded round. Now, that sounds real slick, and it is, But I highly recommend a guy understanding the process of reloading before he gets a progressive press. I had at least 2 guys along the way that wanted to learn this, and they insisted on progressive presses, and they both smashed their presses up and gave it up and said it was, it's just not a good idea to start with a progressive press. So if you're going to reload, don't get a progressive. I would highly recommend a turret press. Every company has one. Lyman makes one. RCBS makes one. Lee makes one. And I like Lee equipment because of the cost. They're cheaper than most. And some people think just because they're cheap, they're junk, but they're really not. I've loaded some quality ammunition on Lee presses. I've had all presses that are out there and all equipment that's out there. And Lee I just like Lee presses. The price is good, and most of us here don't have a lot of money. You can get started reloading with a turret press like this and a little kit for less than $200. Now, ammo, what are you paying for ammo? $20 to $30 a box now. So, if you got 10 boxes at 20, if you bought 10 boxes of ammo at $20 a box, which is probably cheap this day, that's $200. And you got your reloading equipment. Now, a lot of guys think reloading is just getting cheaper ammunition, and it's substandard ammunition. That's definitely not true. Once you understand reloading, now there are guys that reload and they do it drinking a bottle of beer or watching TV or something, and they muff up and reloads get a bad name. But reloaded ammunition, I'm going to try to tell you why, and I got to try to keep out a lot of information because I do this so much, I got so much going on that I might tend to give you too much. Forgive me for that. But reloaded ammunition, I'm going to try to show you why it's better than factory ammunition. Now, once you shoot a cartridge, this is what's left. And most of you guys dump it out on the ground, called a piece of brass or an empty casing. And this is probably the most expensive part. When you guys throw these away, you're probably throwing away 75 cents to $1.50 every time you crank one of them out and leave it on the ground. In this day and age, anyway, at least 75 cents a piece they are. And so you don't reload, you don't care about it. But you ought to pick them up and collect them because this is the most important and expensive part of the process. Now what's left after your bullet is shot? There's only 3 other things. You have a primer, that's the ignition, that's the spark. You have the powder inside the case, and you have the bullet or the projectile that comes out. There's only 3 things to put back in this. Now the problem with this would be, once you fire this bullet, the case expands in your chamber of your gun. So when you go and put a bullet back in, what happens? See, if you try to put a bullet back in here, that's expanded. That's a 30. This is a 300 Winchester short magnum. It's 30 caliber. Same thing as a 30-06. Same thing as a 30-30. It's 308 in diameter, and any 30 caliber shoots basically the same bullets. Now a 30-30 used to have all flat bullets or flat nose because of the tubular magazines and lever actions, but now they have pointed bullets called lever revolution bullets, and they have like a rubberized hard tip on them, so we can't say that all 30-30s are shooting flat nose bullets anymore. But the point is, once you fire the case, the 30 caliber bullet just drops in. So what do you do with that? You have to resize this case and squeeze it back to what it was so you can see the bullet in it. You have to get the old primer out of the case, and you have to put powder back in. Now, I'm going to show you, first of all, hopefully, I just lost my pad, a full-length resizing. There's 2 ways you can size your brass. You can full-length size this whole piece of brass, and I'm about to tell you one of the reasons reloading could be better than factory ammunition, if you listen. When you use a full-length sizing die, it squeezes this brass back down to exactly or very close to the specs that it was when you got it in a factory box of ammunition. Now, if you're shooting a lever action or a semi-automatic gun, you have to full-length size them. But most of us shoot bolt-action guns. And what happens when you fire this brass in your gun, this brass takes the form of your chamber. Now, your chamber, you might have a 30-06 made by Browning. You might have a Browning A-Bolt or a Remington 700 BDL. And I may have the same exact gun. But when you fire your brass, or your bullet, when I fire my bullet, after we measure this, after they're fired, yours may differ from mine. There is a company called, it's called SAMI, that's how I know, it's a Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturing Institute and Company. And they have specs, allowable specs, that the chambers in your guns are allowed to be. And so it can be, from the actual spec that this should be, it can be minus 10 thousandths or plus 10 thousandths. So if your chamber, when you fire this, was big, on the plus 10 thousandth side, this brass is big. And if I took this brass and tried to put it in my gun after you fired your gun, it in your gun, it wouldn't fit. It would be blown out too big. And my gun would have its own size to it also. So though we both have the same identical gun, maybe it's a 30-06 and maybe it's a Remington 700 BDL, the brass is going to be a different size. Now, if you full length resize that, that's okay. You can put that bullet in either gun. But what's neat is that for a reloader, he can do what's called neck sizing, and he can just squeeze this neck back to diameter so that the bullet will now seat in there. And you can keep the brass to the exact form of your chamber, which gives you a little bit better accuracy. And so you have a better, the factory can't do that for you. They got to go by SAMI specs and squeeze it down to small. So when you shoot it, it stretches real hard. It also makes the brass last longer when you have it fitted to your chamber. Now, there's a little hitch to that. If you neck size your ammo and you're shooting them at pretty powerful velocities, after about 2 or 3 times, then it's going to get tight, and you'll have to then full length size it. But you can get 2 or 3 loadings out of it, and if you're not shooting real hot loads, you may get more than that before you have to put it back down to full length size, squeeze all the way back down. So I'm going to show you the 2 ways to do it. If you full length size, you have to lubricate. Don't ever pull one of them up in a full length sizing die without lubricating. Now they used to have real sticky lubes, and I wouldn't recommend them. Today I'm just spraying a little lubricant on the case. I'm going to roll it around a little bit, and I'm going to full length size this case. All you do is put it in the shell holder, and I'm pulling it in a full length sizing die. You may hear the primer drop out. The primer just fell out, the old primer. There's a pin. Now I'm just going to pull the handle on the press up, and now this has been sized, and the primer is now out. Okay, there's a little pin that pushed the primer out, and the die is right here. It's called a decapper. And that first die sized this brass and knocked the primer out. Now the bullet will not fit any longer. It won't drop in there anymore. I can't even push it in. The neck is sized, and the whole casing has been sized. Now, I'm going to be a little fanatical now. You can just go ahead and put a new primer in and reload this, and that's the simplest way, and that's how probably most of you will start. But when they drill that hole in the bottom to make a primer pocket, it's like a drill, and so the bottom of that hole kind of looks like this, where that primer seats. It's kind of like this, and you really want a flat surface for the angle of the primer. And I'm showing you now why reloads are better. The factory got them drilled like this, and the primer's pushed in. I'm going to take, on this little machine, now I have a machine here. You can also get handles. This can be done cheaply. You don't have to buy these big machines. You can have a handle with this little cutter screwed into it, and you can do this by hand. No problem. I've been doing this so long, I have a machine now. The cutter is in a turning spindle, and he's going to show you there. I'm going to put that primer pocket down on that little cutter, and what I'm doing is making that primer pocket flat. Now, that primer pocket, I don't know if you can see that, how shiny it is. Can you see that? It's real shiny, and there's little chips of brass on my machine. I don't know if you can see that. And what we've done is we've made that from this to this. Now, this is fanatical reloading for a minute, okay? Forgive me. The little hole in there, the flash hole where the fire comes through, there's a hole in the bottom. They do that with a punch, and it goes boom and punches. When it punches, it leaves a, what do you call it, a burr on the inside of the case. And so inside of this case, you'll have little burrs sticking up, and when your flame comes from your primer, for accuracy, I'm being a little fanatical, but you want better accuracy, here's what you do. You got a little cutter right here that also will go on a handle, and I'm going to just drop this case down on that cutter, and I'm going to deburr that, take that burr out of there. So now when the flame comes off the primer, instead of hitting the burr and bouncing, it comes into the powder in a very even fashion to ignite the powder evenly. So that's just, I just got into a little fanatics there. You don't have to do that. Okay, Now we got to put a primer back in the bottom of this. There's many ways you can do that. You can do it on the press. This particular press I have has a primer inserter. What you do is when the case is in there, you just pull that up, and can you see up there on the screen? I'm going to push the primer in, and when I push down on the handle and just push snugly, the primer's seated, and you reprime the case. Now, let me show you another. I'll show you another way to do that the next time I do it. Okay. So we've reprimed it and we've resized it. Okay. Next, we're going to put the powder in, and we're going to seat the bullet. Now, there's a lot of ways you can put powder in here. You can get nuts, but you can use a scoop. All you need is a little scoop like this. That's all you really need. You're not going to get what I want to say. You won't get as accurate with this, but you'll get close enough. You'll probably shoot 1.5, 2-inch groups. But if you want to get down precise, you get a scale. Scales come from anywhere from $30 to $230. This one's right about in the middle, this particular scale. It's a mechanical scale. I have it set on 60 grains. I've looked that up in a reloading book already, and I know what I want. So I'm going to take this scoop, which probably is going to give me about 60. If I didn't have a scale, I'd be close enough. As long as you don't go to a max. If you had a scoop that would give you a max and put you over the top, you can't do that. But you say, how do you find out what the max is? They tell you in the literature with a die or a reloading manual. Now, you'll want to have a reloading manual. Reloading manuals are given away free by most powder companies. Alliant gives one out, Hog will give you one. It's just free. It will give you how many grains of powder, what kind of powders you can use in your bullets. Okay, so that's how you know how much to put in. Now, I'm going to use 60 grains of, it's called H414. I'm going to put it on the scale. Now, I probably overdid that a little bit, so we're going to have a little bit too much powder probably. But I just dribble that onto that scale. This is a little bit time consuming. I like to, in rifle shooting, I'm an accuracy fanatic, so I like to weigh every charge. Now some guys don't. There's another way to put powder in a case, and that's just I'll show you that when we do pistols. It's just a regular old powder thrower that you set up and establish to throw however many grains of powder you want to throw, and then you just pull the handle and keep going. But I like to check them anyway and make sure that I'm getting exactly what I want. Now that's 60 grains of powder. Now all you do is take a funnel that fits the case, take the powder, and just drop it in, and make sure it goes down in. Okay, now we got a primer, we got powder, and now we got to seat a bullet. Now, seating the bullet. Every gun, again, SAMI allows for different amounts of space inside your gun. When you seat a bullet, I was going to actually do this with a gun, but I'm not going to be able to do it. We don't have enough time. I have a gun here. I was going to actually do this and show you the process. This is a little bit fanatical. This is a tool that has a case, a threaded case, specially made to screw onto the tool. You take a bullet, the bullet you're going to use, and you put it in here. Then you take the bolt out of your gun. This is for bolt action guns. Stick this in, push this little jiggy behind here, and that bullet comes out and goes up into your chamber. And when it stops, you screw this down tight. And so say it stopped right there, and you have a dowel stick you put in the barrel of the gun, take it out, and now you know exactly what your chamber length is. Now, what's the difference? SAMI tells the factory people to stick it in as far as it can go. So it might be way more than 50, 75 thousandths off of your lands. You might have that much space before the bullet hits the lands of the barrel. And so your accuracy won't be as good. What you want is about 30 thousandths off of the lands. When you're a reloader, you can do that. If you want to. You don't have to, but you can do that. That's an advantage of reloading. I like to do that, obviously, and I do it. So I measure and see what the chamber is. Two of the same exact kind of guns will be different. And you can play with that also. 30 thousandths is a good place to start. But you may get your best accuracy at 20 thousandths or at 35 thousandths or 40 thousandths. If you reload, you can do all that. When you buy factory bullets, you can't do that. So again, reloaded bullets are not just cheaper. And I guarantee you'll cut the price of your ammunition in half and probably as much as down to a third of what you pay for factory ammunition when you reload. You probably pay about a third when you're reloading yourself. All right, now all I do with this bullet is I just place it in the neck of the case. Can you see that? I've preset this die, and that's just a simple plug. It's just you screw it. What I would do is I'd have this unscrewed, and I would pull the bullet up in there and seat it. I would take it out, and I would measure it in the process of getting this proper. And once I got my measurement from my tool, which I was showing you a minute ago, but now this is already preset. So once it's set, you can load every bullet just by pulling the handle down. Boom, that's it. And you have a loaded, ready to shoot, again, 300 Winchester short mag. Now, I could have done that in about 2 seconds if I didn't tell you all what I told you. Let's neck size one. Neck sizing, you don't need the lubricant, especially with Lee dies. Lee dies, some neck size, now, when you neck size, here's a neck sizing die here made by RCBS. If you use that one, you would have to put a little bit of lubricant inside the neck because there's a ball in there that it goes over. This die squeezes the neck. There's no ball. You need no lube. So it's kind of slick. You don't need anything on it. All this is going to do is resize the neck. Now again, the neck of this bullet is, it's got a burr on it, so, but it's going to drop right in. There's a burr on there, so it's going to hold it, but it's going to drop right in the case. All right, so now I'm going to this die is only going to size the neck. It's not squeezing the whole brass, just squeezing the neck. Knock the primer out and squeeze the neck. So now the bullet won't go back in. But this case is exactly the size of the chamber that it was fired in, which makes it more accurate. Now, I'm going to do these little ditties again. I'm just going to take and flatten that plaque. Once that's done once, it's done. Once you work that primer pocket and take that burr out, that's all done. You don't have to do that once. Now, I did forget something the last time around, and I want to make sure I tell you that. Whenever you're reloading rifle ammunition, you have to check the size, the length of this case. And forgive me for not doing that the first time, but I'm going to do it this time. Now, the old-fashioned way of doing this, you used to have to measure your case with a caliber, look at a reloading book or look at a chart, see what it's supposed to be. If it wasn't right, you'd have to get a little, like lathe, kind of like this, if Steve can show it to you. It's a little lathe kind of a unit, and I'm pointing at the bushing that would set the distance that comes. I'm going to show you. This is a 204 Ruger case. I'm just going to show you. I'm going to trim this case. I know this one's probably long. So here's how these work, if you can see that. Can you all see that? Can you all see what's going on there? Okay, I'm going to trim this like a little lathe. You'll probably see the brass coming off. Can you see that right here? There's actually a trim. Okay, so that made it the right size. Now I've preset this little lathe to do that. And now there's a burr on the outside and inside of that case. You have what's called a deburring tool that deburrs the inside and then the outside of that case. That's a hand. This also on this machine that's running, here's the inside and here's the outside. So if you got one of these little ditties, they cost a little bit of money, but you can just do it mechanically. Or you can do it by hand for probably 10, 15 bucks, and you got your deburring tool. And she's ready to go. Now, that would mean you need this lathe, you need one of these, but look, Lee makes a slick little gadget. What they've done is they put a cutter, the same cutter that's on my little lathe over here is on this little piece of steel here. This is your case length gauge. Whatever caliber you shoot, this is already measured for you. You don't need the calibers any longer. You have to put the case in a shell holder. You don't have to put it in a drill. It's got a little handle on it. You can just hold it in your hand. Once it's in this little shell holder, like right here, this is going to, if it doesn't cut, then it's good enough. Now it's going to cut. I can feel it. Or well, a little bit, not too much, but you just press that in, and with a drill, I just knocked off, and that's size. So that eliminates the little lathe. It eliminates the calipers. Lee already gives you this, and you buy in one package from Lee. I sound like a Lee salesman, but I'm just telling you for future reference if you ever do this. In one package, you get the cutter with the blade on it. You don't get the case length. You get the cutter and this little gadget here that goes in the drill. It's called a lock stud. I'm going to unscrew it. You get that little stud. In another package, and it costs about $5 for each package. You only need one cutter and one stud, but I get them for every caliber. The other package will have, like you get a 30-06, you buy a 30-06 one of these, and they give you the shell holder for an 06 and the length for an 06. Am I confusing you? One package has the cutter and just the stud, and that's just basics. Then you got to know what caliber you got. So you got to buy another package. If you got an 06, you get this piece here, and it tells you, gives you the length, and you get a shell holder that screws on here that holds your 06. This particular one's a 300 short mag, so that's made for it. So you just stick it in the shell holder. It has to have no primer in it. Now you take the primer out, and you stick that thing, and it measures it and cuts it. Okay? And then that's good to go. So with rifle ammunition, I had a guy come to me one time. He wanted me to reload some stuff for him. And I told him how long it was going to take, a couple of days, and he said, well, just reload them up. I said, well, no, I got to measure them and do it. Oh, no, my uncle does it. He said, he just does it. You don't have to measure them and trim them and all that. I said, well, it was 7mm magnum. I said, you got to trim 7mm magnums. You can't not trim them. Now, maybe they won't trim, but you better trim them. Because if they get too long, this is where reloading gets a bad name. Guys won't trim something that should be trimmed. And, well, this kid took it out, took it to his uncle. His uncle loaded max loads, didn't trim them, and they were too long, and he welded the bolt shut on his gun, on a brand new 7mm magnum. I mean, it was like brazed in there. Actually, Remington, when I had to end up sending it back to Remington because we couldn't get it undone, Remington said, well, all that was good was the stock. The barrel action was ruined. And Remington sent me a letter back and said the kid could have killed himself that did that. You always trim rifle cases, or at least check them. Check every one. It might sound like laborious, monotonous process, but when you get into this, it's really not. And I'm taking a long time explaining it to you. I can load a box of rifle rounds in I can do it probably 15 minutes. I mean, it's not that long. Okay, so you got to trim it, and then if it trims, you got to deburr it. So inside and outside, that's all you need to do, just a little spin like that. Now, another way to prime cases, you don't have to do it on the press. This is a pretty slick little tool. And after you get them all, you can deprime a bunch of them, get them all ready, and sit them in a tray, and just sit there and just prime each one by simply sticking it in the tool like that and pressing with your finger. And then it does the same thing, it puts the primer in. I like this kind because you can feel the primer seep. That primer should be in there probably about 2-3 thousandths below the surface of your case. You don't want them sticking out. They don't want to be sticking out, but usually that won't happen. But sometimes with a press, it's possible. Most presses today won't do it, but it was, in the old days, it was possible to squash a primer and get a misfire, but it doesn't really happen that much in this day and age. But I do like to do it by hand. Okay, so now we have done all that. I'm going to show you a slick way to put powder in. Steve, here. This is a little more money. This is an electronic scale. Remember I had the scoop? You can start with the scoop. You can have a scale. You can just use the scoop. If you got a scoop that's supposed to divvy up the right amount of grains of powder, a specific powder, which I already checked, and H414 with that scoop was matched. And you can buy a set of scoops like this. They don't cost but less than $15 probably. And you get them, and this little chart tells you all the different powders and blah, blah, blah. When you look at a reloading book and you know you need 35 grains of some particular powder, you just look in here and see which scoop throws 35 grains of that powder. And then you take that scoop and you just take a level scoop and put it in your case. you'll be very, very close. You might be a few tenths off, and it works. But my recommendation would be to get a scale and weigh them off if you want better accuracy. But you can do it that way to start. And that's why I did it that way. But watch this. I've set this machine, I hit 60, I'm going to hit enter. And while I'm standing here, that's going to dump 60 grains of powder into that funnel. Can you see that? That's turning out 60 grains of powder for me. I don't have to go with a scoop. I don't have to do anything. As soon as it's just been, it only take a minute. It's been sitting here, so I mean, I just set it up, and the tube probably doesn't have much powder in it, but it's coming to the end now, and we'll beat. 60 grains of powder. Now that's a little bit more money, but there's the 60 grains of powder, and you can just put it in your case with the funnel again, and then put your bullet in and you're ready to go. Okay, so we did the same thing. I did it with the scoop. I didn't actually do it with the scoop, but you could have just scooped the powder and thrown it in here. That would have been fine. We took the scoop, put it in that mechanical scale, and now you've seen it done in an electronic scale. My son's going to want grand slams in that bullet, so I'm going to put this in for him. This is a different bullet for him. Okay. And I believe the other die is a seating die for the grand slam. So I'm just going to seat this bullet, and we'll go on to the next thing. Okay, and that's a loaded case. Now, I also, when I have the brass in the drill, when I have a piece of brass in here that I'm trimming, like we showed you how to trim, another thing I do, and that's pretty dirty, isn't it? I don't know if you can see how dirty that is. Another thing I do when it's, after I trim it, I'm not going to go through the whole process. I take a piece of steel wool and just hold that on there like that. And then there's also a brass polishing rag you can get. Now some guys tumble their brass in a tumbler. It's a long process. You know, you might spend a day or two tumbling brass, and you'll get corn cob things in your primer holes and all you got to clean out. So for me, that's a lot slicker. I just, while I'm trimming it, or while I'm doing those other little ditties, I just take that, and it looks like a brand new case when you get all done. Can you see that? So you got a brand new looking case anyway. It doesn't look all dirty and ugly. All right, so that's basically rifle. Now, pistol reloading. Now see again, with the turret press, I can take this and put it aside and load something else. That's what's needed. If you got a couple of guns, if you only have one gun, I mean, you know, a hand press would be fine, or a single stage press would be fine. And they make, you don't even have to have a bench. This particular single stage press, Lyman doesn't make it anymore, but Lee makes one like it. It can either be mounted, and it has holes that you would just turn this handle around, and the press would work the opposite way. But this is set so you don't have to mount it. This is set so you can screw dies in here, and it's on a push deal. So you can do this. You can do this just like this without mounting it to anything. You can reload. I mean, you don't need that big of a space to reload. Some guys think they need a whole basement to do this, and if you get in deep enough, you probably need a little room. But you can do it. You can keep your stuff in a closet, really, and get away with it. So, pistols. Okay, now rifles basically have two dies. The sizing die, the depriming and sizing die, knocks the primer out, resizes either the neck or the full length, and the second die is simply seating the bullet to the right depth in your case. Okay, got that? That's basically it. Now, pistol reloading, you have a third step. And if we got deeply into this, we could talk about third steps and different kinds of crimping and stuff in rifle reloading too. Some of you may reload and know that, but I'm trying to be as simple as possible. All right, with basic pistol reloading, you have to do the same first step. You have to resize your case and knock the old primer out. But the second step flares the neck. For pistols, for straight-walled pistol case, you need a little bell to drop the bullet in so the bullet begins to accept in the case. Or if it gets cocked with a big pistol bullet, you can just kind of ruin your brass if it's not in there just right. So your second die, you screw it down until it bells just a little bit, bellows your brass out. And then your third step is seating your bullet, just like with the rifle. This particular setup that Lee has a powder dropper. They have a powder. This is one of those mechanical things. Some guys got these on their benches and they got a handle on them, and you can just drop powder like that once you adjust it. But there again, it's kind of like the scoop, because you're not absolutely sure. It'll be very close, but you might be, 1 or 2/10 of a grain up or down when you do that. Guys do it, they set them up and then they check every 10th one, and they're pretty close though. And in this day and age, you can get pretty good accuracy with it. With a pistol, it's not as critical. A pistol's not that critical if you got a 1/10 of a grain off one way or the other. But with rifles, most of us like to put them bullets as close to the same hole as we can, right? So with rifles, I try to measure every single one. Now, with your rifle bullets, you can do one step, and just deprime them and size them and put them aside, and then do the other steps and come back. And you don't have to make a loaded round every time. You can just do the depriming and resizing, put them aside. Then you can, go through, and if you want to remount the primer pockets and take the burr out, you can do all them. And you can do it however you want to do it. Now, this you can do by hand, mechanically, just like we did the rifle deal. And I probably won't go through that because you saw that with the rifle. I'm going to show you, hopefully, a neat little thing here. And moving this equipment sometimes causes a problem. But Lee, for pistol dies, you can't do that with rifles with this particular press, but they have this little auto-indexing bar that I'm putting in there. And what's going to happen is, I'm going to take a 45 ACP, put that in, pull it up, and we're going to resize and deprime, and then we're going to put a primer in on the downstroke. Now I would have had these in a tray alongside here. If you have a lot of grease or oil on your hands, good thing not to touch your primers, and you can get different things, or you could even get one of those things, take that right out of there and use one of these if you like, the thing I showed you a moment ago. You can do that. But for this particular one, I'm going to do it on the press. So I'm going to push the primer in on the downstroke. Did you see the turret turn? Did you see the turret go around? Okay, I'm on the second state. All I do is push that in until it's firm, pull that right up. I'm getting the powder, it's already pre-done, and it's flaring in that. Now watch, when I come down, the press turns. And so now I take a bullet head. This is a turret press, not a progressive press. It's 3 strokes for 1 bullet. Now notice, the case has been flared, so when I drop this big, fat, 45 round bullet in there, it's going to stand up straight because I have a little flare on that brass. So it's standing right in there. See? If you didn't have that little flare, you wouldn't have that. So when I come up this time, it seats that bullet, and I have a loaded 45, all done, and I'm back to the first step. So that's the way she goes. That's a pistol bullet. And you can just turn them out, one right after the other, with no problem. Deprime and resize. If I had them on a little tray, I would have had that in there already, and then push that down. Come down like that, seat it, just push hard, come up, gets powder and flare, come back down, take a bullet head, stand it up on there and seat it. And you have a loaded round. So how long would it take us to make a box of bullets? That wouldn't take very long at all. So now you have rifle and pistol. And hopefully I'm not going too fast or making it nuts for you. I would like to show you, if you want to take this to, oh wait, we're not too late. I'll show you how to do a shotgun shell. This press by Lee again could be bought for less than $60, probably around $50. And this is a 20 gauge press, set up with 3-inch mags. I'm going to load a Federal case. Now, again, you have books. You're all right. There's a book that I've already looked at to tell me what. Let me talk to you about this case. I'm forgetting some things. It's basically the same thing as your rifle and pistol, only you don't have to resize this whole thing. You got to resize this brass, just the brass end. You got to take the old primer out. Now, in a shotgun shell, you have powder, and then you have what's called a wad that goes between the powder and the shot. It's a shotgun wad. You've probably seen these things laying on the ground after you shoot. And the book will tell you which wad to use and which powder, what recipe to use. You just look up a recipe for what you want to do, and it's not really hard at all. So I have this press set to do what I want it to do. Now you can get mech presses that cost all the way up to, $500, probably $1,000. They have hydraulic presses that will turn one round out after another. They're all automatic. But, for a guy who wants to just do a box of shells and go out and hunt small game or something, this has a resizing ring. This is going to resize my brass for me. You just make sure that the 20 on the thing is, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's so the 2-0, it's not upside down. You just drop it on the case, put it in your first stage, bring this press down on it and press, and that resized the brass. Now, it's got that ring stuck on it. So in the second stage, you stick it on here, and that's going to push it off that thing, and a primer is in this tray coming down. So we just primed it, and we knocked this off, this ring. So now we have a primer, brand new, in the shotgun shell. Okay? Now very simply, you stick it in the third stage, and then you pull down the handle and put the powder in. Pick that up. Where's that wad? Okay, here's the wad. Put the wad right there on that. Can you see it? Everything good? Am I going too fast? Okay, come down in with that, just to the bottom of the thing, and come back with the lever, and make sure your shot came down. Okay, and you have shot in there now, obviously. And then in this press, shotgun shells some of them have six folds, and some of them have 8 folds on the crimps. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but some of them got 6 divots and some of them got 8. Federal has 6. Now on this lead press, the front one in this fourth stage is 6, and the back one back here, you can see that, is 8. So I know that Federal has 6, so I'm in the front stage. I come down and I get a starter on that. You all see that? It's just started to crimp. And then you come into the last stage, and that sets the crimp very simply. And you have looks like brand new shotgun shell. Can you see the crimp? You're welcome. Come look at this, or we can even pass them around. But that's shotgun shell reloading. That's it. I mean, doesn't take that much time. Now, granted, you're going to have to buy a pound of powder at a time. At least that's minimal. You can buy in different shapes and sizes. Most of the guns we shoot for deer and stuff are large rifle primers. They're just large, period. It's just a large rifle primer. There is such a thing as a small rifle primer. If you got a 223 or 204 Ruger or something like that, you got a small rifle primer. You got to buy another box of primer. But depending on how many guns you got, what you're going to do, and then powders you can get versatile powders, but sometimes a particular powder will be better for a particular caliber than another will. So you may end up, if you have a few guns, you may have different powders. But that's a 6-stage. I don't know if I need to bother showing you an 8-stage or not. I think that's probably sufficient. I won't keep you much longer than that. But maybe you have some questions that I can answer. I'm just trying to see if there's anything I forgot that I wanted to tell you. These are reloading manuals that are given free. I mean, you can get, there's Hodgdon, and it's got pretty much any caliber you're going to want. And here's Lee has one, or that's also Hodgdon, I'm sorry. This is Alliant powder, it used to be Hercules, that's free. And here's Vita Vury, that's a free manual. Here's Accurate powder, free. Scott and Norma powder. Most of the companies that make powders will give you a free recipe thing. I would recommend that you get at least one volume. I have most all volumes of reloading. Sierra makes one, Nosler makes one, Lee makes this one. Lee compiled a lot of the data that comes from the literature from each powder company. This is an excellent book for somebody starting out. It's their second edition, and again, I'm back to Lee. Lee, I kind of like the things Lee does. They're economical and they're good. And that's what I like, and probably you do too. So, but there's, Spear has a manual, Lyman has a manual, Sierra has a manual, Barnes has a manual, everybody has a manual. And it doesn't hurt to get them all, and but you don't have to. Okay, now, did I forget anything that I wanted to tell you? I don't think so. You have any questions? I hope I've been a help to you. That's what we want to try to do, to help you with something practical here too. Yeah, brother.
Proper way to store gunpowder.
Proper way to store gunpowder? Yeah. You wouldn't want to put it next to the wood stove. But you know what, I won't tell you that. I had an old 8-pound, I'll tell you, I had an old 8-pound, I bought 8 pounds of powder in a can, and it's empty. But I set it right alongside of my wood stove, that empty can. It's kind of cute. So when you come in my house, you see a can of gunpowder alongside the wood stove, but it doesn't have anything in it. But now, when you store powder, you need to keep it in a cool, dry place. Doesn't hurt it at all to be cold. I get a lot of my stuff from Jerry's. Jerry's got a metal building somewhere up in the mountain somewhere. Ain't got no heat in it, and that's where they keep their powder in. And it stays good. I keep extra powder in the garage. In the room that I keep it in the house, I make sure that room is cool. I do have a wood stove in my house, but that room's always it ain't never more than 65 degrees in there, 60, 65 degrees. And I have a few cans of powder in there. But gunpowder is, smokeless powder is not like black powder. It's not as dangerous as some people think it is. But, I mean, hey, beware, it's gunpowder. But it's not as scary as, when I first started this, I know the feeling of some of you guys. I mean, it was like, you know. And hey, you got to be careful. Don't take me wrong. But if I held a match, it depends on how fast the burning rate is. I can actually hold a match for a few seconds to that powder until it would actually start. You know, but once it starts, it's going to go, guaranteed. But cool place, dry place, garage is fine. I keep mine in a, you know, there's military ammo cases. What are the real big ones? They're boxes about, well, I don't know, they're about that big by that big, and they're about that wide. I keep gunpowder in one of those. I don't know what caliber that case is. Any of you guys know? The military cases. They got, huh?
Are there a bomb case like a flute bomb or flutie?
Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's what I do. I put them in there and keep them out in the garage, and it never goes bad that way or nothing. You know, keeps nice. And I hope I've been confusing. I hope not. I'm trying to be clear for you. Any other questions? Yeah.
That cartridge that was too long, it welded the bolt to the chamber. You were saying someone had a 7mm Magnum and they didn't trim it,
Yeah.
and when they fired it, it welded the bolt to the chamber.
Yeah, he loaded a max amount of powder, and he didn't trim the necks were too long, and he didn't trim them off. So it was so hot, and that neck being down there in the chamber, it just brazed it right shut, brazed his bolt shut. Almost blew the gun up. It can blow the gun up. I didn't hear your whole thing.
No, I'm just wondering what happened.
Oh yeah, that's what happened. It welded the bolt shut. Now usually when when you get something like that happening, it happens rarely. You can just take a 2x4 and a pretty good hammer and just put it against the bolt and whack it and open the bolt and clear it out. But this one, no. And I had to send it to Remington. Remington sent a long letter back and said it was really dangerous. The guy was lucky he didn't kill himself. It was all welded shut. The whole thing was shot. So that was one in my lifetime that didn't split. I've seen pictures of them split, and if that thing splits, man, you get hit with shrapnel, you're done. If you get something like that going on. But it's when you're reloading. In the reloading manuals, they have a starting load and a maximum load. And frankly, the maximum load in liability day and age is usually way under what is going to hurt you. But don't just load maximum loads. I would always start a few grains below maximum at least. It doesn't hurt to start at the starting load at all. It doesn't hurt at all. It's only a few grains difference. And they give you, we just don't pick any old kind of powder. Another thing is, let me just give you this little pointer too. Some guys want to make a reduced load, like they got a kid and they want to make it lighter to shoot. So they just take any old particular powder and they just figure, well, I'll just cut it down in half. Well, you can actually, if you take the wrong powder and do that, you can actually cause a pressure spike and blow your gun up. Because of the, I don't know how it chemically works, but the burning rate of that powder, and there's so much airspace in there, and there's there are reduced loads, and I've loaded some for Michael, for his kids. His daughter shoots a 30-06, I believe she does, and don't kick any more than a 22 probably, maybe a little more than 22, but not much. And that bullet's moving about 1,800 feet per second. It's good enough to kill a deer at 100 yards. Muzzle loaders move between 1,600 and 2,000 feet per second, so a 30 caliber bullet, you gotta use the right bullet. I'm using in that load, I'm using a single shot pistol bullet, which expands faster. It's actually made for a pistol. I'm using it in a rifle, but at pistol velocities. And there's certain kinds of powder that can be used to make reduced loads. But if you're ever going to don't just start reloading and think, I can cut the powder in half and make an easier load. No, you got to find a recipe. Always, if you have it in print, you have a recipe in print, you're pretty safe. And if any of you get to reloading and you got a question, I probably got a book that'll give you the answer. You can call me and I'll tell you what the reload is. Don't just cut powder in half. Go find it. Somebody that's got the information and get a recipe for it. Anybody else got a question? Anything else? Don't be afraid of it. Let it help you. Good enough? Okay, you're all going to go out and get reloading now, right? Hopefully, it'll save you money. Now, initially, you're going to have to spend some money to get the equipment and you got to get powder, bullets. When you buy bullets, you don't buy 20 at a time anymore. You buy 100 at a time, sometimes 50, depending. We got some real quality bullets these days. I have a bullet here. Maybe you take a picture of this, Steve. I think I do. Now, there was a day when only reloaders could have these kind of bullets now, but today you guys can buy them. A lot of these companies are realizing that guys wanted these kind of bullets. And these are Barnes X bullets. That's a triple shock X bullet. That bullet started out like this, and I retrieved that out of a deer I shot clean through a buck. The buck that was on that slideshow down there, I shot him in the front shoulder on an angle, and it went clean through his body, and this was found way back in the end of his hams on the other opposite side. To see the expansion, that's solid copper bullet. The only reason that these things didn't stick out is it hit bone, or they would all look like a flower like that. They do it excellent. There's some free videos from Barnes back there. If there's any left, they actually have, you can take them. They sent me a whole box of them. So some of you might have got them already, but if you didn't, grab one of those videos, and it'll show you how that works. And they do work. I mean, they're expensive. They're solid copper. But I shot coyote at 40 yards with that, and got just as good as expansion as shooting a deer at 300 yards. That's the problem with bullets is, you shoot them too close, they don't expand right, they just go through and, or if you shoot way out there and it loses its velocity, same thing, you don't get the expansion. But these bullets, they got some kind of a hydraulic reaction with that hollow point, and it just peels back, and it does it classically. It's unbelievable. And we have a lot of bullets like that. There's a lot of newfangled bullets in this day and age that are amazing that we have available, but they're getting very expensive too. So, any other questions? Okay, guy?
What happens if you hit a bullet with a shell? With a hammer?
What happens if you hit a bullet with a shell?
No, with a hammer.
Well, you don't want to do that. No, you don't want to do that. That's not a joke. There's kids that do that. They'll take 22 bullets. Bless your heart, that's a good question, but listen carefully. When you have that bullet sitting on a rock and you hit it, and kids have been known to do that with 22 shells, you don't know which way that bullet's going when it comes out of there. Now, it's not going to come out as fast as it would in a barrel, but it can kill you. You don't want to play with that. It can kill you or one of your friends. And when you hit it with a rock, you don't know where it's going. That's not what bullets are made to do. So never, 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 never do that. Kids, for some reason, and they do. I mean, I was a kid once too, believe it or not too long ago. And I remember some of my buddies doing some crazy stuff like that, and most of you probably do too. But, it's a miracle. You'll get killed doing that, buddy. Don't do that. A lot more pressure going through a barrel, but you don't want to play with that. I could take a primer and hit it with a hammer right here, and it would probably make a loud noise. They're pretty powerful. All right, any others? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, to get started, how
single stage press and minimal amount of, I'd say you could get started for equipment for around $150. Just equipment. Now that's not including powder, bullets, and primers. Your equipment's gonna cost you. You could probably get started for right around $150. Less than 200 for sure. And have adequate equipment to make something decent. You know, and you don't, like I said, you don't need the electric scale. It's nice, obviously. I mean, a lot of times what I do is I hit the, you're not seeing me in the process. I hit the button on this electric scale and it's spinning off 60 grains, and I'm coming over here and seating the bullet in the one I just filled. By the time I get done seating that and putting it down, that's already spilled my 60 grains. I come back, I put it in, I come over here, I already hit the button on this, and it's turning out 60 more grains. So I'm just going ba-doom, 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 ba-doom. You see what I mean? In this process, you probably didn't catch that, but we had to wait for it. But I'm not standing there waiting for it. I'm over here seating the bullet in the one I just filled, and that's throwing 60 more grains. Then I take the next case, and I go over and hit the button, dump the powder in, and hit the button, come back over here, and seat the bullet. And while that's happening, by the time I get back there, I got my 60 grains of powder. That's nice when you do a lot of bullets. But you don't have to. Reloading, shouldn't be you're in a hurry. It's enjoyable. And I'll tell you, it's a satisfaction of shooting game or shooting targets and getting the accuracy you want, and you loaded the bullet. It's just something to it. So I try to do that. I try to think of something that would help you economically and something you might be interested in. I hope that was it. Any other questions? Ricky? A 22, like a 22 long rifle or something you shoot squirrels with. That's a rimfire. When you reload, you can't reload rimfire. When you reload, you got to have a center fire with a primer in it. Because see, the rimfire has the primer is built into the head of the case. There's priming material. Same thing. There's like primer material built into that 22, so when the firing pin hits that thing, it sets a spark off in there and it sets the fire. But once you do that, that case is pretty much done. Now, I'll tell you what you can do with those cases. With 22 cases, some guys actually get so far into reloading that they make their own bullets. They make these. And the 22 oftentimes used for jackets, for suading. They squeeze them. I'm not in that deep. You gotta have another set of dies that does that. But there's so many good bullets on the market these days. And these bullets right here are not expensive at all. Like Spear, 150 grain boat tails, and they'll do the job on deer just fine. I mean, these bullets, I don't know how much they are, but I'm gonna imagine. I know Barnes bullets. 50 of these Barnes bullets probably cost you around $50. Round number, about a buck a bullet. These bullets here, probably about a third of that. You get 100 bullets in this, and they're probably about a third of the price. So there's good price bullets that are very good. Ain't no these used for me taking 22 shells and lead core and make my own. It probably wouldn't be as good as what I can buy just as cheap. But guys do it. Guys do it in this day and age. So that's a good question. You can't reload 22 magnums or 22 rimfires because you need to put a new primer in and you can't do that. Any others? One more? No more? Mike? Yeah, no, I'm fine.
I want to, what's the difference between a varmint bullet and one used on a deer?
That's a real good question. I appreciate that. A lot of guys, you can kill a deer, guys would argue that are blue in the face. A lot of guys kill deer with 222s, 223s, 250s, and you can. But a lot of guys don't realize the difference between a frangible varmint bullet and a bullet that's made to kill a deer. There are bullets. Guys kill, you can kill a deer with 22, like Ricky was talking about. You hit him right, you hit him in the head, but that's not, that's not the best way to do it. You can hurt a deer and not get it. But varmint bullets are explosive. They're frangible. They explode upon impact. They don't. It's good because they won't ricochet too, like some bullets would. And when they hit, if they hit a deer, and it's very possible they hit a deer, and the deer is not real thick skin, so it could go in and hit the vital as well. But it could hit the side of that deer, catch a rib. Did you see that picture downstairs, that muzzleloader shot? Hey, you see that picture? I had a, downstairs, if you didn't see it, I shot a deer at 60 yards with 90 grains of black muzzle loader, and I tracked it for over a quarter of a mile, and actually I stopped tracking it at dark and said, I'm going to come back first thing in the morning and get this deer. I know I will. I wonder where in the world that I did it. Well, when I come back first thing in the morning, it was dark. I had my flashlight when I went in. I only went in about 50 yards from where I last left the deer. It was coyote tracks. They were like wolf packs. I mean, it must have been half a dozen or 8 coyotes with this deer. It was unbelievable. I never seen so many coyotes everywhere. Coyotes, and I knew I was going to find a mess. And so I went on probably less than 200 yards. I found the deer, and if you saw the picture on the thing, it was right square behind the shoulder. I mean, that ball went right there, but a rib stopped that ball. Now, why that happened to me is I got lazy. I used to use a patch on my round ball that was hard to get in, and that's what you're supposed to have. It's supposed to be somewhat hard. You almost have to hammer them in. Well, I got these oxyote patches, and oxyote makes 3 different sizes. It makes 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. Well, I tried all 3, but I like them 10,000. You know why? The old ball just went right in there. It was real nice. You just push it right down in. What I didn't realize is I lost my pressure and my velocity. Now, I did check it. I checked it by the patch. When you shoot the gun about 10 yards in front of your gun in the snow, you'll find the patch. If the patch is burnt, there's a hole in it, that ain't no good. That's called burnout. If it's all black, then you're losing pressure. That shows you're losing pressure. It should just show the lands on the patch, like lines from the lands of the barrel going out. Well, mine looked pretty good. It wasn't all black, so I thought it was all right, and it loaded real easy. But I'm sure I've lost velocity with 90 grains of black powder to do what I did, and I had a couple of deer have that happen with. And so I need to go to a tighter patch and get that pressure back and get the velocity that I need to get to penetrate. That ball stopped at a rib. The varmint bullets that guys a lot of times shoot deer with can hit that side of that deer and just explode and never get inside and do a nasty flesh wound on the deer and never kill it. And that's not really a good idea. Now, Nosler makes a 22 caliber partition bullet, which is bonded, and it holds together. When it hits, it mushrooms and makes like a nickel-sized bullet projectile, and that'll tear them up. Barnes makes a triple shock X bullet. I shot a deer 358 yards by a laser rangefinder with a 223 Winchester Super Short Mag, 22 caliber, and dropped it with a Barnes triple shock X bullet. And it was the same thing when it looked just like this, only it was smaller, but it still had them flowers, and it gets to be a nickel size, and that'll do it. But when you're shooting deer with a 22 caliber, if you're going to do it, it can be done. I mean, guys argue this, and they say you ought not to. We have bullets in this day and age but you got to make sure you get the right bullet. Don't get woodchuck bullets and go deer hunt. I wouldn't recommend it. But somebody's going to stand up and say, well, I shot a deer and killed it. I know you did. I believe that. But the best way to do it is get a bullet that'll penetrate and expand, and it'll do that surely most every time you hit the deer. So if you're going to use varmint guns, make sure you're using not varmint bullets if you're going deer hunt with. They even argue 243s aren't big enough for deer, but 243 dynamite guns for deer. Make sure you use the right bullet. Some ballistic tips, Nosler ballistic tips they have 2 kinds of ballistic tips: game ballistic tips and varmint ballistic tips. And that's the difference, the thinner jacket. When you buy a Nosler bullet, just because it's a ballistic tip, don't mean it's good for deer. It may be a varmint ballistic tip. They look the same. So when you buy the bullet, make sure you're getting a game bullet if you're going to hunt game with it. Good question, Michael. Any others? Any others?